welcome to everyone who has joined us for this morning's LinkedIn Live in association with Planday and the Burnt Chef Project. I am joined here this morning by two incredible guests. We have Brett Smith, who is the VP of Customer Experience at Planday. Brett, good morning.
Hello.
You okay? You well?
Yes, finally online. Sorry, it was all my fault, the technical difficulties. I'll admit that first.
Listen, if it's not you, then it would have been one of us. So honestly, do not worry. And also, a very good friend of mine, Alice Bowyer, who's the Director of Food and Drink at the Buckham Group. So good morning, Alice.
Good morning. Good morning, both.
Good. On this very sunny day. Brett, are you whereabouts in the world are you?
We're just in Liverpool Street, in London, down at our offices.
Oh yes, beautiful part. Yeah, really
Yes.
busy. And Alice, which site are you in?
I am in the Methuen Arms, the lovely Methuen Arms, in Corsham, just outside of Bath today. Beautiful garden and the best weather for it as well. So yeah, lovely location to be today.
An incredible venue, yeah, absolutely beautiful. And where better than to be in Wiltshire? Wiltshire.
Yes,
Wiltshire on a day like today. Okay, so this morning we're going to be talking about all things recruitment and retention within hospitality. This is a really important subject matter, especially as within hospitality turnover rates can sometimes be anywhere between 75 to 125%, which is just absolutely ludicrous. And Alice has done some fantastic work in this particular area, and Brett is working tirelessly with a leading tech solution that actually allows individuals and organizations to get ahead of rotoring and planning in advance. So we'll kick off with the first question then, which is Brett, we'll start with you. What do you believe is the single biggest driver of burnout in hospitality today? And how can managers take back control to help reduce turnover in that area?
Yeah, I think the single biggest contributor to burnout is probably doing, of course, a lot of hours. In hospitality businesses these days, especially when I was back working as well, you're looking at sometimes, 55, 60-hour weeks tend to become the norm because you don't really have that control or clarity over those schedules and the working time that they're doing. So I think it's really about just making, being able to have visibility and take control over your schedule and understand it in advance and plan your life. It's so easy when schedules are coming out on a Thursday or sometimes on a Sunday, and that kind of stuff stresses people out when you have to move things around your diary and your personal life and whatnot. So I definitely think that plays a massive part.
And you worked, was it Hard Rock?
Yeah, I worked at a few different places after I left Hard Rock, but yeah, I was there for about 9 years, and they were quite advanced in the technology space when I joined it in 2008. So they had a lot of their tech stack already sorted out way back then, which actually drove a lot of people into that business because there was a lot of friendly apps already back in those days. They were actually building their own until they realized that was a really bad idea, and then actually went out to some other suppliers. But yeah, that definitely it made it more enjoyable place to work.
Fantastic, thank you. We'll be digging into some of those experiences a little bit later on as well, Brett. And Alice, what about yourself? What is the single biggest driver of burnout? What have you experienced, and what do you see from an operational perspective, and how's that combated?
I think it's a lot of things are still the same as they always were. As much progress we're making, there's no denying it. It's a high stress environment. It's long hours. The demand from guests is higher than ever, and I think cost pressures into the industry is causing a lot of added stress. More recently, it feels relentless at times, and so the kind of squeeze from businesses to maximise as much profit as they can and controlling their costs can feed through to teams and the expectations from them. So yeah, it is a high stress environment. I think we've still got some way to make sure that we're equipping our teams with the tools they need to sort of build that resilience and reduce a bit of the stress in the workplace. But I think in terms of how managers can take back control, I think we're going to obviously talk a bit around that predictable scheduling, but the flexibility and be able to plan your time in advance is really key. That support, building resilience, the training, making sure that our teams have got the tools they need to reduce that sort of stress levels. and just creating a positive environment. You know, that's very much what we'll talk about today, about some of the culture and positive reinforcement and environment that we're creating, and how that can help reduce the burnout and the stress, and catch it early, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you both have mentioned that actually it's quite long hours, the pressures to create these wonderful experiences and moments for people is something that constantly is riding on the back of our minds. I mean, it's the whole reason why we go in every day. And of course, you've got in there emotional masking, and there was some quite interesting research that we did with Bournemouth University on the fact that actually having to maintain that emotional front all the time
Yeah.
is incredibly challenging. Now, when you add to that not knowing when you're likely to be working, and not having your rotas, all of a sudden you're in a spin. You know you're there to provide the service, but what does that mean? And how's that communicated? And where do you go? And when's your time off? And when's your time to decompress? It's challenging, right? To be able to make that equilibrium work well from both a personal experience and also an operational experience. So, Brett, just going on a little bit off the cuff, what is it that you've seen from the tech side of things that has been the most beneficial for individuals when they start to look at actually how they're planning their work-life balance and how they're scheduling ahead?
Yeah, I think, the tech itself isn't magic, right? I think like it's the transparency and trust that kind of enables it to drive that retention in terms of having a accurate payroll. Like for example, you're on the bus, you're on the night bus home in London, it's 2 a.m., you finished a really long shift and you forgot to clock out. But you see on the app your manager's clocked you out maybe an hour too early. And you can just message them right away and say, hey, Dave, I was here until this, and then that's sorted. And you just get that transparency right away that they're not kind of chopping 5 minutes off the shifts. And we've all lived in that world back in the day where you were worried about that. So I think it really is just about, yeah, being able to enable that trust. And then another big one, I think, as well, from a technology standpoint, is some apps have a lot of good language support, and we know that everybody's first language isn't English. So to be able to change the language on the application to request holiday and to make things easier for people, I think that's really important too. I can't think of anything worse than a busy manager on shift. You're trying to book a holiday, you knock on the door, they're super busy, you got to fill out a form, and you feel like you're interrupting the manager's workflow. So it's kind of just giving it back to the employee to take control of their own lives in their own language, and being able to use some of that technology just to ground them a bit in their day to day.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, Alice. I mean, obviously, Buckham Group have grown significantly over the last few years with many acquisitions. So, how's that been for you in terms of taking on different cultures, different operational systems, and embedding the Buckham way to improve retention by looking things like, for example, scheduling ahead, and also retention rates with organisations that weren't yours previously?
Yeah, absolutely. What a challenge. We've done two particularly large acquisitions, one in the middle of lockdown, and then one at the beginning of 2023. And I think for us, you have to follow through, the consistency of, if we're going to say that we're going to do, rotas, 2 weeks plus one ahead, and there's a commitment as a company to that, then you have to follow through, because then, to your point, Brett, it's garnering that trust. So as you've got the team engaged with knowing that, oh, this is actually happening, and wow, this is making a good impact into my life, then that trust builds, and then you can start to layer on more and more about open communication and regular checks in the team, and that feeling of being valued. But also there's a bit of a challenge about embracing that technology. That's not for everyone. I feel like it definitely lands better with Gen Z and our younger team. But how do our team, we have some older team in their 50s that work with us, and how do they interact with seeing their scheduling, and how does that work? So it's definitely a challenge, but for me it's the consistency. You have to follow through and show the teams that we really mean it.
Yeah, and it's so often seen that there's a plan of action or a strategy that gets rolled out or gets put into place, but
Yeah.
it's never really ingrained or implemented. It's kind of one of the, oh, do you remember that time we had that policy or had that
Yeah.
structure? And
Yeah.
you have to be able to live and breathe it in order for everyone to start pulling through, and that may require additional support for those who perhaps aren't used to using tech. So, Brett,
Yeah.
what are some of the most high impact ways that managers can make their team feel more valued and heard and respected?
Yeah, I think first off, I think listening is a skill that a lot of people don't have sometimes, especially in a fast-paced environment like hospitality. And not just listening, active listening to what your team members are saying, where there's challenges within the business, and actually making an effort to address them. I know haven't been in that space for 10 years, but I've always been supporting hospitality, but working directly in it for quite some time. And I know a lot of technology has changed a lot in that time, and that there is, applications now where you can look at employee engagement and look at different areas in terms of, loyalty or feeling recognized, or what areas of your employee engagement or people strategy that you need to focus on. Um, and I really think it's also about, being there and walking in their shoes and living that. And I think that's happening more and more. You're seeing more management on the floor. And I do think that's probably due to a lot of cost pressure as well. But, back in the day when managers could be in the office for like 8 hours and you're just out there running shifts and running in circles. And so, yeah, I think it is just really that support and just being there to support them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Alice, I mean, Buckham Group are growing, not just from acquisition point of view, but also they're bucking the trend of what we see reported in the news regularly about hospitality is struggling. The recent figures that came out show that Buckham's in a really strong growth phase, which is fantastic. What is it? What sort of support managers, or what sort of feedback are you getting from managers at the moment who are trying to manage these KPIs as well as the needs of the team, and how are they utilizing either tech or strategies to be able to cope with that?
Yeah, really good question. I think it does. It started with culture, and you touched on it, Brett. That listening, the open communication is absolutely vital. So things that we've put in place, like sort of yearly appraisals, are now called success reviews, and there's a positive spin about that. And those regular check-ins with teams, so that those sort of fair policies, I suppose, as well, put in place. So the structure is there to help and support our managers, but also leadership coaching. We've done a lot of that over the years, because you realise, look at chefs, for instance, when you're going up through the ranks as a chef, no one ever tells you, oh, by the way, when you get to be a head chef, 75% of what you do has nothing to do with food. It's about leading and managing a team. And as an industry, we've been quite poor over the years to equip our teams with that sort of building resilience, and how to kind of lead a team, and how to motivate a team, and how to listen and have that open communication. So that is put in place so that it gives our team, our managers, a head start in knowing that it has to be completed, and that it's very easy, I think, particularly then when you get busy, is always the first thing to drop. I don't have time to do this because we're too busy. And that commitment to say, no, it's non-negotiable. And whatever, as a manager, anyone listening to this, if you're going to commit to, it might be a simple Sunday breakfast with the whole team before shift. And that's your weekly check-in with your team, or it could be every month. But to commit to that and say, no, it's non-negotiable, we will always do this, whether it's to talk about something with the business, or whether to just have a catch-up or not even talk about business. But that is really key. We make sure that the guys are doing weekly managers meeting in particular, because I think, as an ex-chef as well, we love a pre-shift brief and a debrief, with that sort of front of house, back of house sort of collaboration and relationship. So again, knowing that we have to have a pre-shift brief, and what is expected of the team that day, you know where you stand, you know what the expectations are. And the other thing around the leadership coaching and training is we do a lot of role play. So we do a lot of kind of trying to practice a particular situation that might happen that feels a bit uncomfortable, and it's all about building that resilience, so that if it does happen, we've kind of already in our minds gone through it, and we'll just deal with it a bit more calmer, and hopefully not feel so much stressed. So yeah, a number of different things.
There's some really great points in there, and it's role playing is deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people, and we use it in our training courses. But I think at the same time, it's uncomfortable because it's a new skill, and it's exposing
Absolutely.
something new, right?
Absolutely, and I think you know, when it comes to, and I think tech can really help us with this, because we look at all of our employees and particular generations of how they take in training. So we'll show up training in a number of different ways. That might be online, that might be on an app that someone could check on their phone and just check a spec or check something, through to actually physical, you know, sort of standing operation procedures, which is called Our Way. It's our kind of true hospitality Bible. And how our teams take in that training to build that resilience. And let's be honest, a lot of our young employees are just really scared about talking to customers, and that brings its own stress, because that generation is built off texting and messaging on phones. And actually, how can we help build their resilience through role play to kind of have that confidence to talk to our customers about products, or just engage with them and create that hospitality. So yeah, I think people can take it in different ways, but it's just providing that in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, it's such an interest. I was chatting to a three Michelin star chef the other day, and they were saying, you know, the environments now in some places, they do a single service, and yeah, it might be 12 dishes, for example, as a tasting menu, but it's nowhere near the three services you used to do a day with regards to that. And I said, but people are coming in and they are struggling with that communication element, and whether that's with the customers or with the teams, but they don't know how easy they've got it. And I was like, well, this is all a frame of reference, right? You know, we can all say, well, things were a lot harder back in our day and you've got it easy, but the reality is, unless you've experienced that, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but unless you've experienced that, you won't have that frame of reference anymore. So, Brett, in terms of that communication and staff satisfaction, mental well-being, communication with guests, and how tech can help with that, how should managers be utilizing tech? When should they, and when should they not, and how frequently?
Yeah, I think in terms of utilizing tech, I would say daily. You know, I mean, there's so many, there's such an ecosystem of technology and hospitality right now that's all, you know, integrated in some way, shape, or form. So whether you have an all-in-one system or you have separate systems dealing with whether that be like find and hire for recruitment or wellness, or even scheduling. I know some are all in the same system. I think it's using the technology so that the team, as Alice said earlier, it's consistently used for, you know, workplace events or announcements, just stuff like that. So ensuring that you're using it consistently, and you've got some really big champions in the business that actually, you know, appreciate and are champions of that technology. And we see this all the time at Planday, where some people really adopt to it and can kind of see what it can do, and then we do have some people that have a little bit of a resistance to change, that we kind of have to get on board and influence a bit stronger. But it really will help align the team on kind of what's going on around them on a day-to-day basis.
And we've worked with Planday now for 2 years. We've done two different white papers. Are you seeing there's any particular generational age demographic that are utilizing tech more than others?
Definitely. I think it's an expectation now for the younger generations. And I think with them, you know, it's really about boundaries, right? Like there's a cultural shift that's happening, a generational shift, where they're protecting their time more. And they don't want to maybe have work shift swaps in WhatsApp or Facebook messages. Like, right, they want to be able to enter a work app on their own time, and not just have work constantly being, those red notifications showing on your phone. So I just think, yeah, I think they're setting boundaries for us, and I think it's important that they are, because I definitely, and as you said, it's a frame of reference, but I had no boundaries when I was waitressing, and you would just take those shifts, sign off the 11-hour rest period, and off you went. And so, yeah, I think it's good that it's becoming a part of the culture, that burnout doesn't have that foothold. So yeah, it's good they're pushing back.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's not just. I think sometimes we can get blinkered and say, oh, it's only front of house or it's only back of house. But I did a talk last week for a Cedar conference, which was all food service equipment manufacturers, and all of them were saying exactly the same things. They were all saying, you just keep pushing through, you keep responding to emails at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then you start again at 5 in the morning to get ahead. And then I think that I've always believed that in the service profession, we are incredible at providing the best customer service, the best memorable moments in life, but we are terrible at saying no or being selfish. we kind of set fire to ourselves to keep others warm, and it's such a curious thing that I've noticed over the last few years. Alice, how do you equip your managers to lead with empathy and lead with that emotional intelligence and that space, whilst also still hitting the operational goals of growth and KPIs that you have in place?
Yeah, I think it is. We do, as I said before, we do a lot of leadership coaching, and we're building a culture. It's really clear throughout the whole group, really, and not forgetting that we are also 2 breweries, distribute drinks. We have our own sales team. We have a widening, network of head office support now, marketing and sales teams, IT teams. So it's throughout the whole group, really. And it's across, I suppose, 3 areas. One is listening to our people. So we have implemented enough, for instance, a Lib Voice platform. So there are nominated people, and that could be a housekeeper to a bartender to a manager, anybody across the group, to come, and we have quarterly sort of open mic sessions, and that is kind of a rolling agenda now. It might be the last minute meetings, and that's very much just listening to our teams, and we've been able to act on a few of those different things, which is great. Also pulse surveys as well. We ask our team's opinions quite a lot with anything that we might be changing, but also we're trying to create environments and opportunities for people to be in the room to discuss those changes. So focus groups. Last year we started our community week, which is a chance for any of our teams to have their own voice about something they might want to do for a local charity or something that they believe in. It might just be a team building exercise. So getting our teams involved in those sort of decision making and being part of something so that engagement is really key. And then, as I say, like the feeling valued. And so we're very much like positive reinforcement. So all of our managers are equipped with a kind of, a budget around, comps and kindness so that they can give out to their customers. And then our teams are encouraged to they are empowered to say, I want to gift these 2 regulars that come in all the time, and it's their anniversary. This lunch is on us, and it's very much like if you've watched the series The Bear, you get that feel good factor of doing that sort of level of hospitality. It makes you feel so good, and then rewarding team off the back of that. So we'll spread a lot of good stuff like breaking sales records, or this person went above and beyond, and it's all around cultures and behaviours. So that positive reinforcement, feeling valued, listening to our team and getting them involved in making their own decisions. And I think, for anyone's listening to that, if you're just a manager of one business, that could be as simple as deciding as a team what your parameters around service are. So you could come get the team together and go, actually, when are we at peak? And when do we need to just draw back a little bit in terms of a busy service? And when do you feel actually we could push it and actually stretch ourselves a bit? And so that engagement in a decision really lands very well with our teams. So yeah, it's through empathy. It's all around the culture of building that resilience and rewarding the right behaviours, and it breeds, I think, success.
Yeah, such a great example, and it really does come through. I mean, you did coffee mornings as well with customers, and
Yeah.
getting people involved in conversations. And so the culture of empathy and communication isn't just internal, but it's actually how you get your customer base on board with that as well, right?
Absolutely, and I think let's bring it back to I think, which is a key point around where this perhaps starts to go a bit awry, is that predictable scheduling. So as a company, we have a rule, and this works for both operational KPIs and well-being, is a commitment that all rotas have to be written 2 weeks plus the week you're in. Now that commitment is both for us financially to check, where are we forecasting, what's our sales looking like, but also it's giving our teams a heads up to plan their own life, right? This is about work-life balance, offering flexibility. And some of our better managers. Of course, it's very much a skill to be able to do this, but to be able to forecast properly where their team is at, that we can build in holiday. We've started a flexible working contract in the last couple of years, mostly for chefs, but we're hoping that maybe that could work for our draymen and our delivery drivers. Is if you're someone that actually has their own life going on, they've got other stuff going on, and I can only do Tuesdays and Wednesday evenings, great. We have to move, as an industry, we have to move past this, you must work 5 days a week and they must be split shifts, and often they're not split shifts, they're just all day, is being flexible as an employer and building up the team of people that may be only working 1 or 2 or 4 shifts a week. And the fact that one of our biggest growth areas as a business is pre-12 o'clock, like our breakfast trade is really strong. Our customers are coming to us earlier and earlier, and that has given us an opportunity when it comes to scheduling, to be able to be flexible and say, actually, we're open as a team to have people who just work 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. That's what they do, and that works. Because actually some of our team quite like to sleep in and start at 3. It's being able to be flexible and allow people to plan their life, I think just really helps retention, reduced turnover, because now we're starting to actually affect people's lives, and they're starting to realise that I'm really happy in this job, it works for my life, and why would I leave? I'm really happy. So it definitely works.
Good. It's not just a feel good thing. It's a business case that actually shows result, evidently so. So I guess, Brett, along the same sort of lines, how have you seen the use of technology change in terms of people having access to easier rota management systems and having that flexibility to say, look, there's not a cookie cutter approach which is a one size fits all, but actually using products like Planday, for example, to be able to start to redesign the way in which we rota and we schedule.
Yeah, it's actually great because there's a lot of different, I guess, kind of criteria for a shift, whether that's, holiday or, wanting to swap, or as I said, do they have enough rest in between shifts? How many weekends in a row have they worked? Maybe they're on their 16th Saturday, Sunday. Like, do you want to give them a weekend off kind of thing? So it's just that stuff that's so easy to forget unless you have some technology in the background actually looking at how often these types of patterns are happening within your schedule. So I think it's super important. But I also think I was talking to a hotelier last year on a podcast we were doing about this, and he actually he was in the acquisition space, and he used to go in and just sit at a hotel bar and just look at how the employees are using the technology. Like, are they slamming the screens and getting really frustrated with something?
Yeah.
Um, because it's the same with Planday. Like with my own team, I always think, good employee experiences breed good customer experiences. And if they're having difficulty working with that tech stack, like fix that. Go look into that. Don't like keep allowing them to keep struggling with the system. It's supposed to be there to help, not like hinder.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
And I experienced firsthand when I was in Copenhagen working with your team. Everyone was on a Teams call, all sat in the same room, but you had people externally. They could dip in, dip out when they wanted, and all the work was being done on a giant screen, on like a real-time memo screen. So people were moving notes around, adding their thoughts into it, and it was such an organic and productive process. It was a great example of a tech company using alternative tech as well to
Yeah.
further the advancement of conversations and customer service and technology advancements. It was, yeah, it's, I guess for you guys in that space, you're always looking at ways of
Yeah.
utilizing things like, for example, AI, which I know is a huge topic of conversation, and how that can benefit the teams and your customers as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and it's going to be so interesting the next few years how because I mean we're at the cusp of it now. We've got some cool beta things happening, but we don't know. But yeah, I mean, like the smart scheduling space, I think is going to be really interesting. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what comes out of that in terms of how we can save some time. And just thinking back to when I was at Hard Rock doing this schedule there for I think it was like 65, 70 servers. There's like a Sudoku that took me like 6 hours to figure out. Like, yeah.
And I guess that, like, again, this is going to be a left field question, Alice. I'm going to throw it at you just just because I know that you've got this. But without utilizing tech, and even utilizing tech, sometimes people make mistakes. They're tired, they're burnt out. Maybe they haven't seen their family or been off for as long as they can, despite best endeavors. And sometimes mistakes happen with rotoring. What do people do? How does a new manager deal with that first rotoring mistake where they realize they haven't rotated on enough people for a busy bank holiday, for example?
Such a good shout. I mean, I think we've got the support of an operations manager behind that as well, and we look at rotas 3 times a week at least. So we do sort of reporting at the beginning. We look at it again in the midweek and then at the end. So there's so many eyes on it. And the other thing we do is kind of review at the end of period where managers may have overworked their hours, because we like to flag if there's a pattern forming there. And so there's a few eyes on just checking that. And I think all you've got to do is just be open and honest and go, right, okay, made a mistake there. There's a tech there for forecasting. So it will show, we have a graph on our labour scheduling which shows slack and stress, and spot on is what they call it. So it will flag that it's been stressed. It's quite easy to see. And so when you then go back again and forecast sales, it's a bit of an art, but it comes through practice. Is seeing then, okay, I can learn from that, and then where do I look to see if there's going to be another stress period? I'm going to need to put another person on. And the great thing about that is, if you haven't got involved in that before, a lot of our pubs you can notice there's the same amount of people on a Tuesday as there is on a Saturday. And actually coaching our teams, and our operations managers will be doing that with them, is look at the tech that you have to say, actually, if I relocate this person from a Tuesday to a Saturday, it will reduce the stress on a big bank holiday weekend, and actually we're going to be okay on that Tuesday. And so it comes through practice, and I just think as long as you say, yeah, okay, don't repeat the same mistake too many times, you have to just learn from it and go, actually, if I can put one more person on, I'll do that next time. How did that feel? Did that work? Does it need more? Was that just a one-off? We take that was a busy day and learn our lessons, but yeah, it comes through practice, I think.
Yeah, and failure is not it's not a dirty word,
No,
right? It's good to make mistakes and it's good to get it wrong.
absolutely.
Brett, there's another question that I just had spring to mind, is that when we just started discussing, we were talking about how within the service profession, often enough, we're trying to appease everyone, right? We're trying to appease our customers, we're trying to keep our team healthy and happy, and sometimes that means saying yes to everyone, but actually ending up in quite a predicament. So with regards to Planday and technology, what sort of protection mechanisms are there for, say, managers who might be struggling to say, oh, no, you can't have that day off, and yes, you can? Are there time duration periods? Is there anything that can be done from a tech point of view that would help those individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we do it, as do I'm sure many other suppliers have kind of fields where you can set so far time in advance. So, they can't swap shifts 48 hours in advance. You could lock a schedule. You can do use these type of technologies as you please. We have so many features that, coming from a Nordic, from a Copenhagen, Denmark based company, where they're quite flexible, as you can imagine, over there with their working time rules. When we first took our product to the UK, a lot of the UK people we were selling to were like, no, we don't want those features. We don't want them to swap or this. We don't want that. It was scary for them. Like, what do you mean, giving the team some control? And it is the control over to the team members to swap their shifts, but there's an approval process. Managers have a list and a dashboard, and yeah, you can put some guardrails in place to protect the business from any of those type of critical days or high revenue type of days. Yeah.
It's an
And so you
interesting.
starting to, sorry, go on, Alice.
Well, because I was just going to say it's an interesting point, because I think when the fear of the team having control on these things, let's not forget, inherently hospitality feels like a family, and if you can garner that trust where the teams can have a kind of inner agreement that yes, one of us is going to have that third weekend always off, or unfortunately I've got to go to a funeral, the team feel like I'll pick that up for you because we're in a routine, we know where we're at, and actually they can sort all this stuff completely on their own. and actually help managers take a bit of that pressure off, not having to worry about it. So it's a really good point you make, because I think if you can trust your teams to do it, they can find solutions themselves.
That's such an
100%.
incredible cultural shift, right? Is that actually a manager is there to make sure that the business is operationally efficient and also has the duty of care to team members. But actually, that's reciprocal. And if you've got the right culture and the right balance and the understanding, then it's an organism. It's symbiotic. Everyone's working together rather than the expectation being on one single individual to have all the answers all the time. Sometimes, I mean, certainly within our line of work, we see that early stages of burnout tend to be missed. And so, one thing I want to leave our viewers and our listeners with is some key takeaways that they can learn from, whether that's from personal experience or from data that you've seen, is what are some of the key signs that people might be pushing through when it comes down to the subject of burnout or chronic stress, and what can they do to start to tackle that? So, Brett, did you want to go first?
Yeah, definitely. I think becoming withdrawn or demotivated in terms of, if you have employees that are, you're usually your rock star, your superstar that's on shift, that's always, jumping on the expo when you need help, jumping on the bar when you need help. These are the people that when you notice them withdraw, you know that's when you really need to take a look at that. Especially it's because you have this inert, I guess, like, want or desire as a people pleaser in hospitality, like such as myself. I think it's one of my worst traits sometimes, is, yeah, just wanting to make everything work, and just making sure you're not taking that for granted, just because somebody's willing to put in all of that extra work. Are they masking it, as you say? So taking the time to sit down and honestly, how are you? How you doing? How you getting on? Is there anything I can help with? I mean, just taking somebody out of the business for a quick 5-minute walk and asking, how are you? And taking them out of that space, to give them that time to speak. So yeah, I really just think in terms of like well-being and spotting burnout is, we just need to ask different questions, right? Like, and just not assume in the one-to-ones, or that we're going through certain things or recipes or menus or productivity metrics, and just, give them the floor, and be comfortable with silence and asking them open-ended questions.
That's so powerful. Thank you.
Mm.
Those the two last points as well are right on my right on my tick list. Alice, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar. I think watching for changes in behaviour. I think certainly sometimes an incident can flag that, whether that be someone's got angry or said something to someone, and I think you can see a change of behaviour, and that their sort of productivity levels, their sort of behaviour and attitude as they are at work, and also physical symptoms. Sometimes that can show itself in kind of fatigue and headaches, or it might mention that struggling to sleep, or just listening again is the point that you made, which is totally right. Listening to feedback and answering those open-ended questions is particularly important. I think particularly for our male team as well, when that's a bit harder for them to speak up and say something's wrong. So I think you can watch out, look out for that. And I think then I suppose it's on the managers, and certainly for us as a company, sometimes you open up that dialogue and try and pinpoint where it might be, and that it might be a personal issue that's coming to work, or it could be actually this person just needs a time out. We've done that a few times over the years, where sometimes we've offered a different role to someone, to take some time out, and that might be a head chef or something, and they've gone, actually, I've just got other stuff going on right now, and this is too much. And we've found them a role, might be as a sous chef or in another position, and 6 months later they come back and take another head chef position, knowing that they've had some time out, and sort of reevaluate what they're looking for and what their motivations are. I think my big piece of advice is you've got to make the effort to have those check-ins with your team and understand what is motivating your team. And because not one size fits all, someone in your team might be they're saving for a house, saving cash for a house and they want some extra shifts, and you have to sort of make sure that that doesn't go too far. But they want to work more. At some point, maybe I'm getting married next year, or I'm looking to progress my career. And having that time to then find out what's motivating people, you're already tuned into what may be causing, sort of flagging something in the future, which I think is really important. And then there's a chance for us to reevaluate workloads. So if someone is flagging to you, actually, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed here, and then it might flag that actually you could take a certain project or a task and hand that over to someone else in the team to just take the pressure off them a little bit. So providing solutions, I think, is what we're here for when managers, leaders, companies, is to then provide solutions, because that, I feel, is one of the biggest shifts we've had as a company in terms of garnering loyalty, is people remembered that you were there for them at that moment to provide a solution and help out and support. And actually, it's okay. Let's just destigmatize that. It's okay that you're not feeling okay right now. It's not the end of the world. And reassuring people that what we do is our job. It's food and drink. Everything will be okay. And take your time, and we'll find a solution. And that is one of the single most important things we've done, I think.
And that's so beautiful in respect that I think being in a fast-paced industry, if someone isn't able to perform at their best or they have other things going on, the most common thing that we see is that they go, well, you shouldn't be working here then, you've got to leave. And then they're complaining 2 weeks later that people won't come in for jobs and that finding chefs is impossible, right? But actually, if you start to look at this, A, we're dealing with real-life human beings here that have needs, and B, you look at this and go, well, we'd rather not lose this individual because they're great for our culture, they fit with our ethos, this is a momentary blip in the grand scheme of things, so let's keep them within the organisation and let's provide them with that safety in order to be able to return. So I guess as a final question then, Brett, for yourself, why is it so crucial to see retention and some of the strategies that Alice was talking about as a well-being strategy rather than just a staffing and numbers strategy?
Yeah, I think, I think the answer's in the, it's just well-being, right? We want people to be like, instead of calling it stress leave, and I don't know how many businesses these days, some of them that we do work with at Planday are changing it to wellness leave and giving people a certain amount of days of wellness leave to take without shame of coming back from stress leave and that kind of stigma that comes with that. So I just think that those people that are going to prioritize employees' well-being, certainly in this kind of this new generation, but also just having more information to the wellness and data like around it, is that you would be silly not to do anything to build that loyalty. The recruitment out there is tough. That there's so many different places people can go, and you really want to drive that loyalty. Like you can feel when you walk into a restaurant or a venue, if the staff are happy. You can feel it as a consumer. I can feel it every day when I walk in, right? And like that's what's going to drive repeat customer loyalty, but employee loyalty. It's just should be the core, right? People should be at the core of, and I don't think that just applies to hospitality, but definitely, definitely hospitality. But even with my own, people need to be there.
It's such a poignant point to finish on, which is, if you are eating or drinking or experiencing an event at a venue, and the team are tired because you can feel it. You don't even have to be from hospitality or have worked in the environment. Because they're sort of dropping the plate on the table, they're not saying hello, they're not smiling. Then you have a big business problem there, and that's because you've not focused on the core asset of that organization, which is the beating heart, the people that make that. And as a customer, if you notice that, you go, well, I'm not really going to come back again. Like, if I want that sort of abuse, I'll stay with my family. Joking. But it's an interesting one, and I think it's one that's often we're putting profits and labor ahead of happy staff, happy customers, and I think that's a really, really great point to finish on. So, Brett, Alice, thank you ever so much for sharing your experience and talking about how we can retain and how we can improve our recruitment and retention processes by utilizing tech and also strategies. And yeah, thank you. Looking forward to the next one. Cheers.
Thanks, Kris.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.